welcome to the CEO Roundtable, Leading Through the Unknown. I'm Toni Pergolin. I'm the author of Too Important to Fail, Lessons in Nonprofit Leadership. And in my spare time, I'm the CEO of Bancroft, a large regional nonprofit in the human services and healthcare space. Writing the book was honestly something I was goaded into doing, but then it became my mission to publish the book because I knew that there were lessons to be shared for leaders leading through crises of any kind, including a pandemic. I believe that it is our main responsibility as leaders to successfully steer our organization through a crisis in a sustainable way. And that's why we put together a great panel this morning to provide us insight into their leadership lessons of managing through a crisis before the next one is upon us. So before I start, I'd like to thank our sponsors who helped promote this event. They're on your slide right now. Thank you so much for helping us get the word out about our event today. If you have any questions for the panelists, please submit them under the questions tab. All right, panelists, are we ready to get started? All right, well, today I've invited 4 leaders to share their experiences of managing through the unknown of the COVID crisis and share their lessons. And let me start by introducing them to you. First is Dr. Mary Ellen Caro. She's the president and CEO of Pierce College. Second is Adam Pearl. He's the president and CEO of Art Pride, New Jersey, and president of the New Jersey Tourism and Industry Association. Third is Mike Rosiak, regional vice president and chief operating officer for Wiseman Children's Rehabilitation Hospital and Voorhees Pediatric Facility. And Fred Wozniak, CEO of Food Bank of South Jersey.
Morning.
Good morning, and thank you again for all being here today. I want to welcome all of you who have been able to join us this morning. Here's what we hope to get out of the session today. We hope that you learn how organizations that provide essential services such as education, healthcare, food banks, as well as those who were brought to their knees by restrictions like arts and tourism, how all of these types of organizations had to pivot to keep their missions moving forward. Second, you'll learn about the need for courage to take risks, even when we're leading among chaos and without a roadmap. And finally, to understand how a crisis can strengthen your organization in the long run. Sounds like a great discussion this morning, and appreciate everybody being here. All right, so let's get started. And panelists, I'm going to start this question for all of you. We've all led through crises in our career, but this one is truly leading through the unknown. And I want to start by asking you all to describe in just one word or one phrase, what was this crisis like for your organization? Fred, I'm going to start with you.
Well, thank you, Toni, and good morning, everyone. You know, the Food Bank of South Jersey is the leading hunger relief organization in South Jersey. And the phrase that our staff, my colleagues, really have lived through is this is an opportunity to truly serve our mission. You know, the food pandemic, food insecurity has been a pandemic for decades. But when the tidal wave of COVID hit, it really took it to the next level. And so the opportunity to truly serve our mission.
That's great. That's a great phrase. Dr. Caro, what's your one word or one phrase?
Good morning. My phrase is it accentuated the digital divide and accelerated transformation.
Good one.
Wow.
Michael.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was challenging, but reaffirming. So it just supports everything that we've been working on and people, process, and technology, where that happens.
And Adam, one word or phrase.
Good morning, everyone. So I would have to say the word that we've really been focused on is flexibility. You know, I think my fellow panelists certainly, you know, the mission, the reason why we're here, you know, stepping up to the crisis, but for us, it's been flexibility, you know, the ability to adapt on the move and adjust.
So thank you. Good words, good phrases, and I'm sure we'll hear more about what's behind them as we hear more about your stories and your lessons. So I'm going to start with this first question, and Adam and Fred, I'm going to address this to you because I believe your organizations were impacted in very different ways. And so Adam, just as you said, flexibility was key. Tell us about how the tourism business was impacted and how you had to pivot.
So yeah, I would love to share that, Tony. Thank you. And I'll talk a little bit about tourism and a little bit about the arts industry because in my professional capacity, without getting into it, I represent both industries. So both of these industries have been devastated by the pandemic. So just to put some statistics behind this, it's important to understand. If you look at just the month of August, right, this year, 2020 versus 2019, there was $1.2 billion visitor spending, less of visitor spending,
Wow.
just in the month of August. The tourism industry as a whole is about a $45 billion industry. 1 in 10 New Jerseyans are employed in the tourism industry. This is not just the shore, although the shore is bread and butter of the economy. This is a 21 county, 4-season economy. This is the ski slopes in Sussex County. This is the visitors coming into Newark International Airport. This is the conferences in Princeton and Atlantic City. It's all of that together. And so all of that has been immensely impacted. And so tourism businesses had to pivot, especially in the summer season, to be able to welcome guests, to be able to adjust to cleaning protocols, adjust to new legislation, adjust to how they market and how they talk to their consumers. On the arts side, Tony, we just actually finished the initial analysis of a recent survey of about 200 arts organizations across the state. Two numbers are really stick out. The first is they're expecting about $100 million in losses between March and December of this year. And two, over half of them still say that without significant support from the federal or state, some sort of pandemic relief, they're not going to survive the pandemic. But these are the same arts organizations that have pivoted to provide safe spaces for their artists, to provide virtual offerings, so that you can take your ballet class on 3 p.m. a Tuesday because you're home anyway, right? And are also now starting to come back. The New Jersey Symphony Orchestra rehearsed for the first time in person at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, spaced, socially distanced, with a lot of protocols, but it happened yesterday. So there's
That's awesome. I mean, it's interesting, Adam, just to hear, because I don't think everybody realizes just the financial impact that tourism brings to the state that supports everything else that happens in the state, by the way. So for sure, there'll be a ripple down effect of that. And it's just really great to hear that in both industries that they've been able to pivot and at least try to keep some of that moving. So that was great to hear. Now, Fred, I feel like you are the complete opposite of Adam's situation here. It sounds to me like what I've been reading, you guys have been in overdrive. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and it's still overdrive. It's, since March 13th, we have served over almost 11 million pounds of food, which equates to a little over 9 million meals to the 4 counties that we serve. And that's Burlington, Camden, Gloucester, and Salem County. So we distribute food to about 206 agencies in these counties and within 58 communities. But when pre-COVID, we were at 185 agencies. So this overdrive, these agencies, partnering agencies, are pantries. They're nonprofit organizations. We are at 185 and we went up to 206 because the other nonprofits pivoted to meet a mission within their neighborhoods. This is a 45% increase over last year at this time.
Wow.
And so the lines, and we also have 28 mobile distribution sites. So our pivot was looking at how are we going to do this healthy, safe, social distancing. We stopped our volunteer program from coming in the building because of hand touches, which means then we had to stop our community food drives, cans, shelf stable, and so forth, just to keep people safe. So we lost about 300,000 pounds in community food drives at this point, but we have a safe environment. Annually we have about 8,000 volunteers that help us make this all happen. So we're still in overdrive. We're getting ready for the perfect storm. With everything that's within our environment, our communities, and the second spike happening. So, but we're blessed that we have this opportunity to serve.
So again, just fascinating numbers of, just how many pounds of food and how many people that you're feeding. And interesting to hear that you had, you're doing 45% more, but you're doing it with 8,000 less helpers. And I mean, it's amazing.
Well, 8,000 less, yeah, volunteers. It's true. I mean, we're 61 staff. We're small but mighty, but we did have to bring in a whole crew of temp staff to help us create these emergency boxes that became part of our drive and go at our food distribution site. So
great. Well, thank you for your great work.
Thank you.
Dr. Caro, so as I read through the news and alumni communications, it's just full of reports on how universities and colleges are being tested by this crisis. Some of them are closing. They're all showing significant decreases in revenue, and they're all pivoting to virtual. So tell us about how Pierce was impacted and how you were able to manage through.
Absolutely, thank you. For higher education in general, as you said, the industry was turned on its head. And you see the most significant impacts on those traditional student in universities and colleges. For Pierce, we really saw impacts in a number of areas. And just to give a little context, Pierce College is a 155-year-old private college in the center of Philadelphia. Our average age of student is 35. We are honored that we're a minority serving individual, and as such, many of our students are low income and depend upon financial aid to complete their studies. So as this hit us, we really saw the impacts in 3 areas. The first area is the actual course delivery. Now, we were fortunate in that we had always delivered our courses in a hybrid fashion. In fact, students could choose from week to week whether they wanted to attend classes on site or online. So that offered great flexibility. Now, about 25% of our students really did want to continue on site. So for them, this was a significant transition. So what we were able to do was very quickly evolve to exclusively online and later on incorporate real-time connections through those classes called synchronous, so that students were able optionally to be able to interact with professors and each other. And Pierce runs 6 undergraduate terms a year. There are 7 or 8 weeks depending on the term. So this wasn't about a one-time summer semester, spring semester. This is something that we're dealing with every 8 weeks. The second facet is our operations. When we closed our campus in March, literally over the weekend, we then moved into the beginning of our business continuity plans that had been put in place, where all of our employees would be able to continue to serve students and support the institution remotely. So what we needed to do immediately was ensure that all of our employees had the right equipment at their disposal. When we thought this might be 3 months or 2 months, there was one approach. As we saw, it would be 6 months and more than that now. We needed to really look at systemic changes to equipping our folks with the right equipment, with the right connections, and also to begin working in a mode that was able to support our students, which brings us to the third facet, our students. What we found, and this gets to the accentuation of the digital divide, is that our students were struggling. They were dealing with their childcare situations. They had multiple family members that needed to use a PC. In many cases, it wasn't even financial, but their time. They could not continue with the load of courses that we had. So we really needed to put in place supports for those students and to encourage and enable them to continue with their education. Things like we put in place fast fail options for courses, which took off some of the pressure. We were able to distribute laptops so that for those households that were being forced everybody on the same laptop, that we were able to support our students. And we also created emergency student funds and made use of CARE funding to be able to help our students financially. So we were seeing impacts in every facet of our business.
Wow. I mean, again, you just don't even realize, for a college that was mostly online, you know, you still had to do a lot of pivoting through this. So yeah, thanks for sharing. So I'm sure that you would all agree that how well we were positioned before COVID hit foreshadowed how well we would navigate through it. So at Bancroft, we have more than 750 people in our residential care. And as soon as it hit, the very first few days, I recognized that we needed to make some quick decisions and that would have to act very swiftly. So as a former CFO, I looked in my toolbox and I have a bunch of tools for how to do a financial turnaround, a bunch of them. But when I looked in there, I had no tools for how to manage a health crisis for 750 individuals. But as a CEO, what we all have, fortunately, is a big team of people, right, in our toolbox, and we can look into their toolboxes as well. And so I was able to really see that my chief clinical officer had an amazing toolbox on how to manage a health crisis. So for me, on day one, the first thing I did was to appoint her in charge. And I thought it was critical that when you go through a crisis, there's one person in charge who's making all the decisions so they're consistent across the organization and the communication is coming from one source. And so putting somebody in charge I thought was important, even if it wasn't me, right? It's like you have to find the best person who can really lead through the crisis. So Mike, when you think about your day one, you know, you take care of medically fragile children. And now it's in a pandemic. So tell me about what you did in those early days and what the biggest impact for you was.
Well, I think a couple of things, Tony, just as you experience in everything that you all do at Bancroft, first and foremost, it's to protect our patients, our families, and our staff. So our preparation, we had preparation leading up to day one. So weeks before, just trending, watching the news, understanding what's coming our direction, we were having 2 days a week, we were having meetings of a COVID response team here at Weissman and Voorhees, and meeting pretty regularly about that. As COVID hit and day one hit us, we went to daily meetings, daily updates, and having to be as nimble and pivot as we all have to do. Inpatient programs, we service about 3,500 children here in South Jersey. So we have inpatient programs both at Voorhees Pediatric Facility, which is about 115 children, and here at Weissman, which we can go anywhere from 10 to 20 children at any given time on the inpatient side. So the visitation aspect, which I know you guys felt as well, we had to modify our visitation. We actually had to shut our visitation down, which was really difficult, and that's something that we're still working through today. Our ability to connect these families, thanks to technology, really helped us a lot. Our ability now to get patients outside to meet with their families has been really good. But I think the greatest challenge has been still allowing the families the ability to see and their children on a regular basis, which still isn't happening.
Yeah.
The inpatient programs were challenged, but then we had ambulatory care programs such as medical daycare, which we have 3 of, which take care of kids from birth to 6. That situation, that program that occurred, really created a problem for us that we weren't able to bring the kids in. Everybody was isolated and shut down. So we had to pivot again. And what we were able to do was really create a virtual home-based model for medical daycare where we deliver meals to the kids on a weekly basis, and their families also gave us an opportunity to case manage and care coordinate a bit to see those kids. We virtually put TR Child Life to have regular circle times and meetings with the kids, and the kids get to see one another virtually through Zoom. And we case manage those kids. In fact, this week into next week, we're going out to do flu shots on site. Again, another way to connect with the families. We had Voorhees Pediatric Rehab Services, which is a school-based rehab service that we provided Voorhees Peds. Again, was something we do directly on site with patients. We had to pivot there. And when school started to come back, Voorhees was prepared to provide virtual rehab services. We've done that same thing with our outpatient services. Our outpatient services, 100% of our outpatient visits, which are close to 40,000 visits a year, we're stopped, we're shut down for on-site visits. So it took us, I'm proud of the team, it took us 7 days to transition to tele-rehab. We were able to pick up 50% of our visits. stay in contact with the rest of the families. Today, we're still being safe from a COVID and from an infection control perspective, but we have about 40 to 50% of our kids back on site, and we're doing about 40% of our kids via virtual tele-rehab at this point. So we had a lot of balls in the air. And of course, the Bancroft schools we touched on earlier, Tony, was as that school started to reopen, initially we had to do bedside therapy for the kids and work with the teachers as well. Now we're seeing that open up a little bit, and we're really excited about that. So change was inevitable.
You know, Mike, interesting to hear it. And you're right, you had a lot going on, but you also, I'm sure you recognize just how much these people depended on your service, right? I mean, they needed you, and you can't just say, listen, everybody kind of figure it out on their own. We'll see you when this is over. And so just to hear how you made sure they got food and case management and so all those therapies, I mean, is remarkable. And I think, when we think about how we all shifted to this virtual thing, I would say too, I'm very, very impressed with my team on how they've been able to continue our care. Like you just can't stop, right? None of us, you just can't stop what we're doing. So great to hear. So, Mike talked a little bit about some hard decisions he had to make. And I would say, when I think about some of the hard decisions I had to make, the biggest one was the lockdown in our group homes. And, telling families really, right? I mean, in a time where they were nervous, right? We were all anxious when this first hit. And we say, like, listen, I know you're really anxious, but no contact with your child. I mean, that was a really hard decision to make. And then, additionally, to think that we kept 750 people locked in their group homes. I mean, you can't go out. I mean, it was hard. They're really hard decisions. But as leaders, I think that sometimes we have to make these hard decisions. So Fred, tell me about some hard decisions you had to make through this.
Yeah, that's interesting. We really didn't have hard decisions, but like Mike, we were blessed with some pre-planning, and not so much knowing that COVID was coming. We were fortunate that we had a state grant to help us with our technology upgrade. So about 2 weeks prior to COVID, we completely outfitted all our offices and staff from Windows 7 upgraded to Windows 10, and then everyone had new working stations, including laptops and monitors. And when COVID hit, the decision was first, paramount was our staff and their family safety. And so we went to, 50% of our staff went to work remotely, but we didn't lose a beat. It was just transition time of getting your equipment from your office over to the home. And at that point, we established, like Mike was talking about, and yourself too, we had established the A team I call them the A team of 8 people, our senior staff, and each was assigned with strategy leads. And we met for the first 2.5 months every morning at 9:30. We leave the meeting by 11. By 11:30, something else changed. We've gone through that, but we had a focus of 8 of us, and myself and the COO were pretty much we were the main contact points. But this team really helped us stay above the curve, if you will, to serve. So it's
so interesting theme here that I think is coming out is don't wait for the crisis to hit. Right. Yeah. So see it coming, anything happening around us, instantly be thinking about what if this goes a little bit further and how will we react? And the second thing, I think to your point, Fred, is, take advantage of, computers and automation and technology, because clearly that's what I think has kept us all moving forward. And so wherever there's opportunity for that, how to, don't wait for it, right? Don't wait for the next crisis. Dr. Carroll, how about you? What was one of your big, hard decisions?
Well, very similar to what each of you have said. First and foremost, we decided at the beginning that the safety of our students and our staff was paramount. And any decision that that was able to be decided would have to remain in concert with that commitment. So for us, closing immediately was in compliance with the local rules, and we did it. But where the decision started to get harder was looking forward, as you said, Toni. And many schools were saying, we'll be back now, this date we'll be back. very shortly in 3 months. We decided very early on to make decisions about how long we would remain closed for a couple of reasons. We really wanted to give our students an opportunity to plan themselves and to understand. And when I say closed, I mean the campus. For our employees, that gave them some peace of mind. So as this went on and we said we will be closed through June, and then we were going to remain closed through the fall to December, we made those decisions quickly and didn't back off of them. We decided that we would begin to look at piloting, opening different parts of our campus. We're in one of those very old, beautiful sets of brownstones in the city, and they're really difficult to navigate with new rules, with the social distancing kinds of rules. So we knew that we weren't just going to be able to flip a switch and everyone go back. So it was that continuing decision about closing the campus and when to do it, and then how to support our staff who were dealing with, like I said before, their children being home, elder care, child care, basic needs, and our students who had the same kind of constraints on them and pressures. And one thing we found through all of this was by focusing on safety and putting our students and our employees first, we could begin to ease some of the mental pressures. Isolation, stress, and all of that just comes into play, regardless of the industry that you're in when you're trying to work. So we were trying to eliminate the sources of stress that came from us.
I think it's a great point, and something that was very different about this crisis than most that we deal with, right? It wasn't just a crisis that was happening at work. It wasn't like the financial crisis or a reputation crisis.
Right.
This crisis is impacting people's personal life just as much or even more than their work life. And helping them through that, like helping them plan and giving them time to plan and think about, elders and people who, have, are maybe prone to this more than others. I mean, we had to kind of put that, I think, first in a lot of cases, more than even what was happening in the organization. So I think that was great. Adam, how about you? What were some of the hard decisions you guys had to make?
So, one of the things that it's maybe not the exact answer to your question, but is in the same vein of thinking here, is one of the most challenging things that I have to deal with as a leader. And I run a relatively small team where, seven people. Our organization is much smaller than the rest of the panelists here, although the industry I represent is quite large. But that, I think, is, Toni, to your point, I am a little bit of like a counterbalance here, right? Because what's happening to the tourism and arts industry is a longer impact. These are organizations that are still down now, and what the recovery looks like on the other side is different than the healthcare industry, the education industry, and certainly the immediate need of the, of food security, right? So, but when I'm thinking about, sort of what we all have to deal with universally as leaders and dealing with teams, one of the things that I had never had to deal with before was worrying about the safety of my employees. So, OSHA safety, sure, if we're in education, unfortunately, we're dealing with other safety issues, but I'm talking about like the day-to-day health and safety, the mental well-being of people, in addition to myself, right? In addition to the things that I'm trying to be safe and protect. It's not just staff morale anymore. It's not just like, how are folks feeling? We're not just talking about culture. We're just talking about, are you safe? Do you feel safe? And so we can transition. We transitioned overnight, literally, as a team to remote working, and found out fairly quickly that we were in an office because it was nice to be in an office together, and we can do our jobs remotely. But there were all sorts of other factors that we really had to deal with, and that I found personally challenging, and are continuing to work through and continuing to try and support. And I think the way out of that is to be transparent with the staff, to say, this is what's going on. This is what's going on with our finances. This is what's going on with that loan we're trying to get that's going to keep us afloat. And this is what's going to look like. And to let them know, And it was like, we're not going to come back until at least after Memorial Day, after Labor Day. We're not going to come back into the office at least after January 1st. So just that transparency that I care, I'm thinking about it, I'm concerned about the same thing you are, and we're all on the same page. And now let's hunker down and do our job and try to achieve our mission, even in the face of these, unprecedented challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and I think we're all saying the same thing. Is we had to literally care about our staff in a very different way, their mental well-being, their personal life, all those types of things to keep to keep them in a good place and to keep our businesses running. So let's talk about what we all do as CEOs, what our days look like before COVID, and now what they look like after COVID. So I don't know about all of you, but before COVID hit, I spent my day running around from meeting to meeting to meeting, and I had breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, dinner meetings, and then I had evening network events, right? And it was a large part of my role was to be the external face of Bancroft. It was nonstop, and then it stopped. Now, how I spend my time today is dramatically changed. In some ways for the better, in some ways not so much. So tell me each about you. What do you like about the new way you work, and what do you miss the most? Mike, let me start with you.
What I like the most is because of our way of communicating has changed pretty significantly, right? A big part of our workforce isn't even on site right now. It's only our direct caregivers. So we have better scheduled meetings. We always had huddles. We always had meetings. We had ad hoc meetings. But I think when people are available, you're getting groups together ad hoc pretty quickly. And at different times, you might not have all the decision makers in the room necessarily. So I think this has given us the opportunity to take a more organized approach to even meetings, because we're sending Zoom. You think about who you want in the meeting. And in a work type of way, I think we're actually a little more productive because of those type of meetings. The other thing that's been important to us is data. Something that was really important to us, but visualization dashboards, balance scorecards, and getting information is critical now, especially when we have to pivot. So you're getting real feedback in real time. So they're kind of the issues that I see that we've improved pretty significantly.
That's great. Fred, how about you? What's your day look like now?
Well, it's funny when the pandemic hit or we were shut down, the food bank, we were probably on every single television network in Philadelphia, New Jersey, newspapers. So all of a sudden, the Food Bank of South Jersey and food banks across the country became the face, if you will, of the pandemic. All those ripple effects from unemployment and on, we're serving 50% more people. We were out in front. So that was fun, but after a while, but I don't like it. I don't like it because we took a deep dive. Our culture in the last 18 months was really working on, group engagement, around the themes of emotional intelligence, mindfulness. And we had group working teams to work on initiatives here we call neighborhoods, to help move our strategic plan. But all that work, I believe, helped us pivot as we needed to, as Mike was saying, remote. We had the tools, and our first 2 weeks were conference calls. Then all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, we're upgraded to 10. We can do Teams. And so then we went to all this, and we threw into things like Pizza Fridays. We'd have coffee perks Tuesday afternoons. We would have just a 15-minute coffee break for whoever's working remotely. And in this, but this is going to be the new norm for a long time. And so, as Michael said, that we've adapted to it. We necessarily don't like it, but we're doing the best we can under the circuit. And it's challenging. These, like you said, ad hoc meetings. You don't have that face-to-face conversation that's going to help resolve an issue if it lags on. So we're still working through those challenges as we move forward. So
thank you, Dr. Caro. How has your day changed? What do you like and what do you miss?
Well, my day has become endless Zoom calls. So whereas before you would be running around very much like what you said, Toni, now I have to make an effort to make sure I build into my day the ability to get up away from the screen and the Zoom calls, and just encouraging that with all of the folks that I work with. I think from an external standpoint, what has happened is even more communication is now happening at the CEO level. I'm involved in so many discussions across industries about the recovery and reopening of Philadelphia and what that means, and what industry, nonprofits, higher education, what roles can we play to try to address the situation, because it is devastating to the city of Philadelphia in terms of all of the displaced workers from hospitality and so forth, and the need to immediately reskill these displaced employees for some of the emerging job opportunities that we see coming. So my day is a little different in that I'm in a lot of planning meetings and discussions. Internally, we have really increased formal communications with our staff to keep them engaged, informed, and aligned. So I spend a lot of time providing updates to people, to the entire staff. We've created different forums with different groups within the organization to make sure that they're aligned, and also just opportunities to stay engaged with every level of employee and every functional group. What we found, similar to external companies that I talk with all the time, and probably all of you, is that some of the processes that we employed were not codified. So if someone had a question, they could lean over to their office mate or someone in a cubicle and ask how to get things done. Well, now that wasn't as easy to do. So what we're trying to do is look at these processes, write them down, internalize them so they're repeatable. So what don't I like? Well, I miss the people. I miss the human interaction. And I have to say, my first time back in the building after it had been closed through March, April, May, it was really emotional for me. Just walking in that building, seeing a couple of people that I knew who were manning the guard station, and just the overwhelming lack of activity, of excitement, of life. And it looked as if just we shut down, like we did, shut down, and things were kind of left just the way they were, people's offices. And that, to me, while I had been like most of you, moving, focusing, going forward, I hadn't taken that pause to say, oh my, this really has been impactful, and it's still going on. So I miss the people. I miss the human interaction.
Yeah.
I would say I'm in that same boat. I mean, in many ways, I'm a little bit more productive because I'm not driving around and being late to meetings and all that kind of stuff. But I really thrive on the human interaction and hearing people's thinking, and I like my team really right around me rather than on my screen. And the other thing that we found that I think hasn't been impacted is when new people start. So you're new to a position and you have not met people, and we do have people in our office now 2 days a week, which has at least begun to help some of that. But it's been a whole different way of thinking.
Onboarding is really challenging.
It's hard. It's hard.
We didn't bring a lot, but we brought some key leaders on during this time. And you forget how important acculturation is when you're living in the space with each other.
Right.
And you're able, so, we've really had to rethink, how do we onboard folks in this environment? How do we really make sure that people are productive? And once this went on for 6 or 8 months, how do we really put in place work at home standards? What should they look like? And so I'm spending a lot of time on things like that, as well as the external requests to get involved with the region.
And Adam, how about you? What is your, what do you like about this new way we're working, and what do you miss?
I miss the art. I mean, that's an easy one. I miss the art. I miss going and seeing the art, all of it, the visual art, the dance, the performing. We get some of it virtually, but I think both the artists and the patrons would tell you it's not the same. So I think that's the thing I miss the most. I am one of those parents who I'm working from home and my kids are home virtually 5 days a week. My wife is a school teacher. She's in the classroom 4 days a week. So it's a lot of juggling. But you know, it's nice being, you know, of course, being with the family and having this time.
Yeah.
And I'm also, you know, of the mind and perspective that, you know, 5, 10, 20 years from now, when we're talking about this with like, hopefully my grandkids, right? It's going to be like, do you remember that crazy time when, you know, like that's right. Like, and of course the world is going to be different because of it, right? But I do think it's something that we will come out on the other side of and try to just focus on the same thing we do with our staffs that I do with my kids is, you know, perspective and how can we learn and how can we grow from this. And you know, and just sort of gratitude for what we have.
Yep. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about strategic planning, right? So this is something as CEOs we're always doing, right? Looking at strategic plans and you know, weighing all the factors. You know, so I'm pretty sure of all the scenarios you thought through, none of us were thinking about this, right? So we didn't really have this in our scenario planning. But now that we have this piece of information, you know, how will that help us, you know, plan differently when you're looking at your strategic plan for the next 3 years, the next 5 years? Adam, I'm going to go back to you. How are you guys thinking about strategic planning?
Well, we were thinking about strategic planning very differently at the beginning of the year. We actually had, Art Pride had a meeting on Tuesday, March 10th in a very packed, I remember it being stuffy conference room, you know, at beautiful Grounds for Culture, elbow to elbow with like 15 of us in the room. It seems so foreign now. And we were talking about what our 5-year strategic plan looked like. And of course, now you fast forward 8 months later, and we've definitely pivoted. The strategic planning committee clearly said we can't think about it like that. We as an organization put together a strategic framework for this fiscal year that would run through next June for us. So what are the things that are most important to our mission? What are the things that we need to focus on? You know, especially in this year, you know, listening to the industry, adapting to change, being a resource, these sorts of things that are important for us as an organization so that as new and different things come at us, we can decide, is this important work for us to be doing right now? Or is this something that we should be finding someone else that should be focusing on? And within our industry too, you have gone to see from people who have been thinking about these like 3 to 5 year strategic plans,
Yeah.
to like 2 to 3 month strategic plans.
Right.
Same thing with budgeting projections. Like let's do this 2 or 3 months at a time. I mean, it depends on what your organization, how you're funded, but that has so drastically changed how we think strategically as leaders.
And I'm sure we all share that. I think it's the truth. I mean, you know, we'd all be in this 3 to 5 years, and now we're like, you know, how are we going to get through the next quarter, and what does that look like? So thanks for sharing. Fred, how about you? I mean, now that you see just how, you know, different a crisis might impact your company, how are you strategic planning?
Well, it's interesting, as Adam was saying, our strategic plan was finalized late 2019, approved for 2020. So March 16th was going to be our first quarter with the strategic planning committee update. But what we found, Toni, is, you know, the strategic planning process that we went through, you know, the 6-7 months prior, really set the foundation for our critical thinking, trust amongst the team members and the board. And the fact that when, you know, when we were shut down, we went into this whole different mode. But what we found is there were items in our strategic plan that really catapulted. Things that we were planning to do in 2021 actually came to fruition gone by. And so we just had a planning meeting this past week. You know, our main concern right now is the next 3 to 6 to 9 months with the perfect storm coming, even though we have these external dreams of actions that we're going to keep working on, but it's the immediate food crisis that we're going to have, lack of food or food insecure needs. And so the really strategic plan helped set us foundationally moving forward. So.
Yep. And Mike, how about you?
I think, Toni, for us, we kind of live in the world of a balanced scorecard. So you have your pillars in which you work in, people and business development. I think we were somewhat prepared for change, and we always are. The good news is, being a small organization of 1,000 employees, relative in healthcare, that's a small organization. We are the speedboat compared to the aircraft carriers we all talked about today. So it hasn't changed our thinking. We've only been looking at the world from 1 to 3 year strategic plans recently anyhow, because it seems like that's the way the industry is going anyhow. So again, technology fuels our ability to change, right?
Yeah, I think all of us are thinking about our technology plans in a very different way. You see just how critical they helped us get through this. And Dr. Caro, what are you thinking about strategic planning?
Well, as I said in my opening phrase, it accelerated transformation. Higher ed has been in this transformative mode where society is saying, you're not really meeting our needs. We need programs that are applied. We're not sure we can afford the price of higher education. And we had always been an applied program institution. But what this did was begin to really accelerate our strategic plan by listening to the needs of the employers and how they are changing. What do I mean by that? Small, stackable, short training programs that can be converted to credit, modular programs. Folks don't have 3 years, 4 years to complete a degree. Employers don't have that kind of time, and they're being pressed themselves by expenses and tuition assistance. So for us, we are bringing forward, as many of you had said, some of our plans that might have been a little bit further out up front, and changing our portfolio to meet training and skilling needs. So strategic planning, given the industry we're in, can't be more than a year or two out. And obviously, you know, we have certain financial goals for certain metrics that we have to meet and that we use as diagnostics for us, regardless of what we're delivering. You know, we have to make those so we can be in business to serve our constituents. But it certainly is different. We believe it's an opportunity for those who can truly step up to the emerging needs.
I love all the positivity coming out of you all today, right? This is not doom and gloom. This is opportunity. We're gonna do things differently, and we're gonna be able to do it even better. All right, so we have a few more minutes left, and I have a couple more questions, but I just want to encourage our audience, if you have any questions for our panelists, put them in the chat box, and they'll come directly to me. So let's talk a little bit about our staff, and some of you addressed this, but I want to talk a little bit more about it. You know, our staff had to do very different things, right? We have direct care, we have some that are working remotely, we have some that are, you know, in overdrive, doing way more than they used to do. You know, all of our staff are in doing very different things than they did before the pandemic. And so my question is how did you keep them informed, and how did you keep them engaged? Informed and engaged and motivated, right? Because like it's draining. It's draining for us personally, right? So it's like, how did you keep your staff informed, engaged, and motivated? Mike, I'm gonna start with you because I know you have direct care, you have remote.
And as we said, people off-site, yeah. I mean, it was a great concept that our HR department and our communications rolled out for us, and it was called Live with a Leader. So again, using technology, using Zoom, we would do weekly meetings. And of course, part of it would be a COVID update. Part of it would be questions and answers. People were able, like we're doing now, able to text questions, email questions in. And that really showed a connectivity for both people that were home and on site. So that's helped. Ongoing, we, like any organization, have living the values, which we highlight our employees that are doing great things. We incorporated that into Live with a Leader. We also started highlighting our employees during this time for the stuff they do outside of work. It's called The Other Side. So it's a 5 or 10 minute little interview with a young lady from communications that identifies and highlights people do some amazing things outside of work. So those things help, you know, support engagement. Last but not least, and we all can laugh about this, and it's true, we fed everybody. So you know, again, pizza day, Fred, and whatever we can do from time. The community support was also amazing. There were some vendors and folks in the community would send meals in for the staff as well. So that's what
awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. Fred, how about you? Did you feed everybody too?
Yeah, well, being a food bank, we did. Like I said, we had Pizza Fridays. They loved Mr. Softy showed up as a surprise. And again, these are staff that are here because again, we have hands on the boxes versus boots on the ground. But any staff that intermittently came in, if they were part of this, we would have quarterly. We had 3 quarterly staff meetings already, going on our 3rd. Anyone who was working remotely, we would send them a $10 Wawa card to get lunch. And, the staff that were in the building, we would have lunch for this quarterly townhouse meeting update. But I sent out biweekly letters to the staff, to the whole staff, communication. And so that was the thing. But the 3 areas that really helped us to keep staff motivated was accountability. Accountability to what they need to do and to their fellow colleague in a safe manner, but also accountability to the mission. The second area is Mike alluded to, is recognition and rewards. We still had our birthday recognition. We had our anniversary years pinning recognitions. And the last part really is we put our staff, our people first. And it's 4 areas quickly that help with this. And I call it a resonant environment cultures. We inspire hope and vision. We remind staff what their purpose is. I tell them we were all brought here. No one went to college or went to school for food banking, but we all were meant to be here at this time to help navigate. Definitely, we spread compassion and practice empathy, not only for self, but for our colleagues and for all the clients that we're meeting, and practice mindfulness. When you're present with your staff, then you really see the true essence of what their their spirit, mind, body, and heart. You can get that, but you can only be present. And then, of course, I have a dad joke jar behind me here. Every time there's a dad joke, $1 goes in it. It's really filled up pretty quickly. But we have their sense of humor. We know we have to have fun, and that smile is contagious to others. So, all those things collectively.
Great lesson.
Let's go.
Great lesson.
Thank you.
Adam, how about you with your 7 employees, but even more of like the people in the arts, the people that can't do what they want to do? I mean, how are they staying motivated?
So a couple things. So within the staff, again, because I think some of the attendees looking over the list of the folks that were on the call, I think some folks are team leaders running smaller teams. We have traditional staff meetings where there are safe spaces and there are information sharing. But we quickly picked up some other communication modes. So, we have email, of course, and we also use like a project management tool called Monday.com. There's a million different project management tools. That's great for like understanding where folks are and who's up next and who's waiting on who to get the thing done, right?
Yeah.
We also all bought into a communication app called Slack. And again, there's a different million apps, but we use Slack more conversationally. And so it can be like, there's different threads. There's an IT thread. There's, hey, anyone else having trouble with the server, or is it just my internet? There's also the general one where like we have one staff employee who reminds everybody it's stretch o'clock, get up, move around. You can add moving pictures and memes, and you could be and Fred, I'm with you. I do the dad joke thing, and it's just. Right. It's meant to be a little lighthearted. At the same time, I was really preaching to my team that we're lucky. Like, we're all home, we're all safe, and we can all work on making a huge impact for our clients, the arts organizations around the state. We can still do our job. We can do it, and we can do it well. And now we're fast forward 7-8 months later with a state budget that's been passed, with an increase to the State Arts Council, NEA funding increase. So we've seen successes in our sort of typical metrics and the atypical metrics that have popped up. To answer your second part of the question, Tony, I can count on maybe a hand how many times we did like a webinar in my like 5 or 6 years with Art Pride. Since the pandemic hit, I think we've done just short of 20 of them, averaging 75 to 100 people a webinar.
Wow.
In the beginning, they were every other week, and a lot of it was just our director of public policy and advocacy. This was Friday morning, just synthesizing all the information that came in over the week and being like, as an arts organization leader, here's what's most important to you. Here's what we know. What are your questions? Let's answer them. Oh, I don't know the answer to that. I'll either circle back to you or come back next week and we'll answer that for everybody. And so it was a lot of just trying to get, for us, getting the information, getting it to other leaders so they can make their decisions.
That's great. So I got a few questions text to me, and Fred, I think this one's for you. Somebody in our audience works at the Community Food Bank of New Jersey, and she wants to know what your best advice on how to pivot to still accomplish what's needed.
How to pivot and still accomplish what's needed. Keep the mission in the forefront, but you know, there's daily need of feeding people, and so you know, for us, you know, the pivot was at a higher level. But our main mission was to ensure no one goes to bed hungry. So I believe you can keep that in the forefront, everything else will trail right to that mission.
Yeah, and I think it's great advice, and probably, you know, for all of us, if we can keep our mission right or in our forefront and just make sure we're working towards that, I think it keeps us all motivated. And you know, Adam, you know, I liked hearing about. I love all the light humor. I'm going to say I'm not sure I'm doing as great as that on you guys. I'm not sure we're feeding as many people either. But you know, I think that you know, having people recognize that even though this is hard and it is hard for all of us, we are fortunate that we're still able to work and we're still able to do our mission, and we're still able to stay safe, because not everybody around us is out there doing that. Another question I got around technology, and you know, we've talked about technology, but this one specifically is, are you thinking about ways to leverage your technology to drive cost savings or increase efficiencies, right? So if you learn more things about technology in this phase that you're thinking, you know, maybe this is something that we'll do more long term. Mary Ellen, is there anything that pops into your mind?
Well, we actually are, you know, really focused on the next stage of technology. And I think one of my fellow panelists mentioned it. There are ways to be able to collect data and use diagnostics in this situation. And we are trying to expedite that as well. But technology also to make us more efficient and productive so that our representatives have the information on their screens right immediately when they're talking to a student or a prospective student, and being able just to make us a smarter, more efficient workforce in the midst of all of this, and take advantage of the fact that we are leaders in technology. How can we incorporate that into what we teach and the partners that we serve? And for example, we're developing a program in remote leadership, because we've heard from so many other industries that managing their leaders remotely is something that's kind of hit or miss, and there isn't a lot written about that. So we're trying to take our technology to quickly develop courses and training to push that out, that actually tries to address some of these challenges that folks are facing.
That's great. Well, I think you guys did an excellent job. We're right at 9:28, and I want to point out, Fred, we see the message behind you. Eat beans. So we'll leave knowing that we can eat beans. And Mike, why don't you show us your trophy there, because we see it peeking out over your shoulder. Very impressive. Very impressive.
We play Northeast Philadelphia every year, and I just want to go on record as saying it's staying here next year as well. Thank you.
Awesome. That's awesome. Any closing comments? Any words of advice, for one more word of advice for our audience today? Fred?
Stay positive and test negative.
I like it. Dr. Caro?
Perseverance with a smile.
Michael?
I think this has proven that it's challenging but obtainable.
Like it. And Adam?
Perspective and gratitude, and above all, kindness.
Awesome. Awesome. You guys did a great job. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. I hope you got some good advice today.